Since it's Christmas time, let's do another game on sale on Steam list. This one, it'll be games that are less than $5. Let's begin. First, Dust and Elysian Tale is $3.49. Its normal price is $14.99. Let's start with one of the best games on my previous list that I did talk about, and for $3.49, this game's an absolute blast. Dust has got a lot of really good animations. It's got a great Metroidvania map and feel. The combat's good, and it's also got a really great story, well worth $3.49. Another game I talked about in my last video that was less than $5 that is worth trying is Double Dragon Neon for $3.99. Way forward spin on the Double Dragon is probably the best one. The fighting is pretty decent. Graphics may not have aged the best, but they're still pretty good considering how this game's like 10 years old and it was only like $10 to begin with. But the 80s parody and the villain Skelmageddon are probably what makes this game really shine, and it's super fun. So I do also recommend picking this one up. The Steam version also comes with online play, which was pretty okay. And if you're liking this video so far, please leave a like and subscribe. Let's talk about a few JRPGs that are certainly worth $5 from this Tales series. Tales of Symphonia is $4.99. While Square Enix doesn't have any classic Final Fantasy games, I would recommend the Steam version for under $5. Let's look at its rival, the Tales of series. Tales of Symphonia is really good, and I do recommend it. It blends elements from Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy X from its story. Basically, whenever the land of Silverod's mana gets low, the world is visited by a super powerful race called the Desians, who basically enslave the world and mess shit up. It's up to the Chosen to complete a ritual in order to restore mana and get rid of the Desians. Lloyd Irving joins his friend Colette, the current Chosen, on her journey to stop the Desians after he manages to accidentally get banished from his village because he ticked off a bunch of them. But as he journeys, he finds out what the ritual actually entails, and he also finds another world is actually caught up in an even bigger mess. The game is definitely worth checking out. It's super fun, and the Steam version is probably the best version out there at the moment. Then we have Tales of Zestiria, and this is probably the worst of the $5 Tales of entries on this list, but I still say it's worth checking out for that matter. It just has some problems with the story and the armor system, but if you're looking for a cheap JRPG, you can certainly do worse. Anyways, the combat is still really fun. The world is pretty good and open for a game made for the PS3, so there's plenty to explore, and there's a lot of side quests too, so I'm playing through it again and I'm having a good time, so I do recommend it for $4.99. Then we have Tales of Berseria, which is a prequel to Zestria set thousands of years in the past. Velvet Crow was a simple girl until her brother-in-law betrayed her and her family. Her brother was killed and she was turned into a demon. Now she hunts down the man who did this to her to try to get revenge. Yeah, it's a more personal tale, and it's one of those, your hero isn't necessarily heroic. The Tales series isn't afraid to do that. In the end, the characters are still memorable, and the story is still pretty good. I enjoyed this one enough to say it's worth $5. Then we have the Batman Arkham Asylum, another game from my previous list, but like I said, I'm keeping this list for $5 and below, and this one's a super fun game I'd recommend for $5. Basically, Batman has just captured the Joker and returned him to Arkham Asylum, only to have the Joker escape again and take over the place. Now with the inmates literally running the asylum, it's up to Batman to try to restore order. It's a fun action game with some memorable areas, and it's just really well worth checking out, and it's super fun. We also have The Secret of Monkey Island for $3.49. It's probably one of the best point-and-click adventures to come out in the 90s, and this is a remake from a dozen plus years ago, and it still holds up pretty good. Take control of rookie pirate Guybrush Threepwood as he tries to become a mighty pirate and stop the ghost pirate like Chuck. This game's super funny. Like, for example, there's this area where you can steal the shovel from the shopkeeper, you can't succeed because every time you try, the shopkeeper pops up and chews you out. But most games you expect there would be like 1 or 2 conversations. There's like 10 conversations between Guybrush and the shopkeeper with him trying to steal the shovel. That's just how well and clever this game is made. Well worth $3.49. I'd be completely remiss if I was doing a cheap games list to forget Castlevania and Contra collections are $3.99 each. The Contra and Castlevania collections are really good. The Castlevania collection has the original Castlevania, Castlevania 3, Super Castlevania, Castlevania Bloodlines, all worth checking out. And while Castlevania 2 and the Castlevania Game Boy games aren't as good as the others, they're not necessarily bad. You can at least check them out and come to your own opinion and throw in Kid Dracula. You got a really good collection for $4. If you're wanting to try more of a action shooter genre, then the Contra collection is pretty good. You get the Contra and Super Contra arcade games, which are okay arcade games. They have aged a bit, but they're not bad. That said, their NES ports are even better, and this game does include both the Japanese and the original Contra games. Then you also have Contra 3 and the Contra Game Boy game that they throw in here too, making for a really good list. The only bad game I can say about this collection is the American version of Contra Hardcore. Most of the console games of Contra that are on this list have either cheat codes or option menus to tone down the game's difficulty and give you more lives, since Contra is a hard experience. This one does not do that, at least for the American version, because Konami pulled those options. And what you get is just really a hard as hell and not very enjoyable game, but the rest of the games on the Contra collection are well worth it. Then we have Blaster Master Zero. I played a little bit of the Blaster Master for the NES since it's on the Switch Online. Never got way far into it. It's not a bad game. It's a game that if I played when I was younger, I could see myself really enjoying it. That said, Inti Creates took what was great about Blaster Master and did the upgrades where it needed and added in more story, better maps, and just a more fun experience. And it's well worth the less than $5 price Inti Creates is asking for Blaster Master Zero. And then we also have Mighty Gunvolt, the cheapest game on this list, for $1.49. And it's meant to be cheap. This was basically a little demo kind of promoting 3 other full-scale games that Inti Creates released on the 3DS several years ago, and then they re-released it on Steam with a few more stages in it. But basically, it's showing off stages from Mighty Number 9, Audra Striker Gunvolt, and Galgun Double Piece, and each character has their own weapons and power-ups, and each stage is kind of based off the games that they're presenting. It's a fun enough game and a cheap version for $1.49 that I think it's well worth getting. And then the last game on this list, and certainly least, is Hyper Neptunia version 3. If you're in for some goofy humor and some satire aimed at the Japanese anime and game industry, then you'll love the Neptunia series. Don't like cringy fan service? Or you're wanting a good JRPG experience? You might not enjoy this experience. I will be honest with that. But I personally found myself laughing my ass off at this one, and I didn't really care if the gameplay wasn't really that great and was as vanilla as heck. Anyways, Neptunia finds herself in a dimension that is similar to the game industry in the 90s, dealing with Planetombs, or aka Sega's console god Plutia, who is basically Bruce Banner, usually a laid-back sleepyhead, unless you manage to make her angry, and then she can turn into this dominatrix version of the Hulk and tear shit up, and it's usually pretty hilarious. And if you know your gaming history, then you know where they get some of these jokes and where this game is coming from. So I do recommend it for $4. I don't think I'd recommend it for much more than that, though. Anyways, this is Tommy the Game Master with the second list. If you enjoyed it, please like and share, or I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Not yet! Multiple current! Yeah! Tiger Blade!
You're definitely improving more.
Yep, thanks to all of you.
Thanks to us indeed.
Well, every little bit helps.